Is this okay? Two German, two Istat, and Dutch, and the Swedish presentation.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So how
Then
does it work?
I will ask. It should be simply. Werden, dass sie mindestens eine schreibgeschützte.
You know, this is the IT. Something unexpected happens always.
So. No, let it open.
Okay.
Germany too.
Yeah, there's one German, one Austrian. This is
Ah,
Austria.
okay. Austria. Okay.
Okay.
Is that one?
The exciting day. We have the mystery excursion waiting for us this afternoon. But before that, we also have some exciting program. So the session title is Profiling and Globalization. And globalization and the way multinational enterprise groups organize their activities and structures have a considerable impact on our work and on the statistics that we release. So to ensure the quality of the statistical output we disseminate, we also need the appropriate statistical units in our registers. And determining the statistical units requires increasingly information not only available on the national level, but also cooperation across borders and information from supranational registers like the EGR, containing information on the structures, but also on the cross-border relationships. Profiling was mentioned by quite a few of you on Monday as an ongoing activity or going concern. So today we will be benefiting from several presentations on profiling activities, automated and manual, on the delineation of enterprise groups, and on the interplay of National Statistical Business Register and the EGR. So, without further ado, I would like to welcome the first speaker, but just to let you know that as Serena is going to present two papers from ISTAT, as her colleagues are not here, I decided to switch the order a bit. So first we will have presentations which are linked to automated profiling. So we will start from the item 2 on your agenda. So this is a paper from Serena Miliardo, sorry. So please, go ahead, the floor is yours.
Good morning, I'm Serena. I'm responsible in ISTAT for a GRM profiling team. This work is done with my colleague Francesca Alonsi, and the main contents concern, before some reference of economic terrorism group structures, and concern the implementation of ISTA automatic profiling based on the strategy on group structures, and some impacts on our business register enterprise groups, and the introduction of a new unit that we call the representative units, that is a unit that must be to represent the new ent, and some conclusion and future developments. I want to say that ISTAT is engaged in automatic profiling starting from 2011, thanks to the participation to different projects such as Soggetti contract and different mono-beneficiary grant agreement, in which for the first time we experimented the methodology of automatic profiling on simple groups. ISTAT continues to implement this methodology also on large complex groups. This is why in ISTAT there are a large number of complex enterprises. It is not possible for internal constraint to apply the manual profiling on all these groups. The methodology automatic profiling, the scope is to introduce a new statistical unit in the business register at national level. And globalization is, globalization requires all member states to do comparable and consistent statistics. This implies for us necessary a combination between the pure economic view of business register and the statistical one. And manual and automatic profiling go in this direction. And we start our study from some economic theories on group structures, and we based our methodology on the main literature on group structure based on strictly linked between the economic theory and the group structure between our business register. Thanks to the construction on our business register enterprise groups that contains information on all direct and indirect relationship, and also on control level of each legal unit belonging to each groups. Now, the methodology is, we can consider two main steps of this methodology. The first one consider the structures, the organization structures of groups by legal units at control level. And the second is the test on some economic aggregate at the group level. The methodology is very complex and requires an integrated base of microdata available in time for requirement for AGR. It's very difficult because we integrate different administrative sources such as legal information at legal unit level, the control relationship, and also the frame SABS. We use the value added from SABS frame. We also link information by balance sheet. And also we invest with our NICE expert to construct new, to enlarge the list of potentially of ancillary integrated unit available in different manual to adapt it to the national situation, economic situation. Our methodology focuses in this moment on the target population SABS legal unit and SABS group. So in Italy there are more than 18% of groups that are for us called simple group, because they are composed by a number of legal units in the SABS population equal or minus of 3 legal units. We call it complex groups, the groups with more than 3 legal units. The basic assumption of this algorithm is that for simple group is not necessary to consider the group structures, but this group structure is very important when we try to individuate sub-autonomous enterprises belonging to the groups. Okay. This is starting from the economic theories. We consider 3 main typologies of group structures. Group mainly vertically integrated. In the picture 1, you can see that all unit depending from the unit on the top, the activity controlled by the global group head, we suppose that are vertically integrated, and in this case for us it is not possible to try below the more sub-autonomous hand. The same in case of horizontal structures, groups, in which all the units are controlled, are in the second level, are directly controlled by the global group head. The third type of structures is the matrix structures that can be considered a mixed structure between vertical and horizontal structures of group. In this case, it's possible is a typical structure of very large complex groups in which usually we try more than one holding on more sub-holding that control different segments. In this case, we can hypothesize that there are sub-autonomous and belonging to the groups. This is the first algorithm that we apply in general or for the first time to all groups belonging to business register enterprise groups. Naturally, we not consider groups profiled by manual profiling that in this moment are about 30, but in the next month we want to increase this number. And the identification of non-activity groups is based at group level, considering NACE 4-digit level, and we consider in order 3 economic variables: value added from SABS frame, turnover from business register, and persons employed from business register. In the first case, a group is considered non-activity. It is implied that one group equal one SABS ent if at least the 19% of the value of the chosen economic variable in order first value added, if value added is not available, turnover, or at the end persons employed, is concentrated in only one economic activity at NACE 4-digit level. This become the representative unit for the representative NACE of the new ent. In case in which the threshold is lower than 19%, we consider also ancillary vertical integrated activity that have been mapping our business register using the correspondence table developed by our NACE expert. If the sum of principal activity ancillary that we consider some percentage of maximum 10%, integrated activity of maximum 30%, the groups can be considering as being harmonic activity groups. In this case, one groups equal one ent. In case in which the group has not satisfy this test, simple groups which are not solved as mono-activity groups are considered multi-activity, one groups who have more than SABS ent. The situation is the same before the test. In case of complex groups, the first test of economic, principal economic activity is reapplied also for complex groups, but for which groups that not have, for which the test is negative, we consider the group structure. We have created an indicator for some typology of vertical, horizontal, or matrix structure. And for vertical, horizontal groups, we compare this typology of groups to the simple groups, because we hypothesize that there are not autonomous enterprises. In case of the matrix structures, we apply a second algorithm that we can call the iterative algorithm that, starting from the second level, the group structures, breaks the structures continuously up to bring them back to new horizontal or vertical substructures. And finally, the condition of the test of mono-activity groups is reapplied on the new substructures. If the condition is positive, we delineate new groups equal a new ent. In the contrary, we consider all legal unit independently. This is the first impact of our business register on reference year 2016. In the first case, we can see that about 50% of groups have vertical structures, about 37 horizontal, and about 7% matrix structure. So this is the main impact in terms of legal unit and in terms of employment at national level. And starting from more than 256,000 legal units, and that represent more of 4 million of employment. We can see that at the end of this algorithm, we found about 164,000 hands divided by different economic sector, and with a decrease of in total decrease of 56% in terms of legal units. And the large decrease naturally is for holding, for service sectors, and also in terms of employment. At the end of this algorithm, our business prototype of business register is transferred to our colleagues from SABS that, based on our delineation, invest to consolidate value added and the other economics variables. And we introduce a new concept for the unit that represents a unit, and that is the unit that we represent the ant, the new ant, and we have chosen the unit that represents the ant in terms of economic variable used for the delineation of the ant in order value added, turnover, and number of persons employed. In such case in which more legal unit belonging to the representative unit, it can be the necessity to make a chosen between legal unit. We consider in order different indicators, such as the status of activity of the legal unit, one is active and another not, while we consider all legal units from groups active and non-active, and we consider in second step legal form. We prefer legal form as limited company. We consider the level on the group structures, and the hypothesis is that the legal units that are at the top level of the structure of the groups are more representative respect than that are the lower level. And in the end, we can consider also the 5-digit on the classification of the NACE, that in general, the 5-digit, the height number of the 5 digits is less important of the first number. Then, some conclusion. Manual and automatic profiling occupying a core position in ISTAT. And we continue to develop this methodology. Is a prototype. We want to, we have several collaboration with SABS experts. And the next month in ISTAT start a new survey on intraflow data, SABS survey of about 18 groups for the first year. That the list for these surveys is for the first 30 groups is the manual profiling at national level. For the other groups is the register automatic profiling. And the collaboration increased with SABS thanks to a new European task project for the action plan, in which we invest in a new expert. We formed also new people that work on profiling, both delineation and consolidation. The scope is to form a new expert that are expert together in business register and consolidation. And for us, automatic profiling is a good method if all necessary information on organizational structure of the groups are available, and if all administrative sources are available in time, information legal unit, information relationship, information SBS data. And this algorithm requires a big investment of the business register enterprise groups, a full revision that in ISTAT is foreseen in the next month for updating process in terms of new procedure, new software, new tables, and new variables. And also, our study are focused only in the next month on the continuity rules for the enterprises. Thanks.
Many thanks, Serena, for the very interesting example of how you've approached this issue of automatic profiling. And also for keeping the time perfectly. So we have some time to ask questions to what you have heard. And I see that there is already first question. Julita from Poland, please.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for interesting presentation. I would like to ask you about threshold, how you define the threshold to which groups you would like to profile automatically. Could you say something about?
We don't use a threshold. We automatically about, it depends on how many groups we delineate by manual profiling and national level. We put apart these groups, and that for the 2016 years are 32, and the other are profiling automatically. And in the next future, we want to increase the check for automatic delineation, but before we want to develop tools that guarantee to the expert to check the groups, to introduce the new information.
Thank you. Other questions? Yes, stay in Denmark, please.
Also, thank you for interesting presentation. I was wondering of some things. It was on your slide 10, where we could see that the wholesale was growing and not the industry. And as I remember, I've seen a presentation from France where it was different the other way. And I also think in my head it will be more normal. So why do you think the wholesale is growing? Is it because of the value added that's very important for you or something? I also have a question about the data collection. How next year will you so make the data collection on the enterprise level or on the legal unit level, and so do some exercise on your own? And so you also mentioned that you have different legal forms in an enterprise. How do you deal that with the national account? Do they have problems in your national account if you have different sectors in the same enterprise?
No, okay, starting from the first question.
Yes.
And when we individuated the population of automatic profiling, we focus only on institutional sector of enterprises as 11. We exclude from the target of automatic profiling the other institutional sector. We consider only, for the moment, only holding from financial holding. The other financial sector are excluded from the population, while SBS not collect data for financial institutions in ISTAT. In the next future, I don't know if we will change this population. The second is the value added, the new surveys of interflow.
It was,
or for the automatic?
yes, it's for automatic profiling, and you have a growth in the wholesale activity and not in the industry. So I was thinking, how do you decide which activity code the enterprise should have?
The activity, the
Yes, you have this table 1 in your paper and page 10 in your presentation here, where you could see that the wholesale was growing in numbers of employed, and I also think in turnover.
I don't have...
Zurich.
Non lo vedo qui. It's not the mouse. Okay, okay, okay. This, I open. Okay. Number 6, no,
Number 10.
10. Okay.
Yes. There you can see the wholesale has 1.8 on impact on employment, and the industry is not growing. I thought I have seen examples from France where it was the different way. So this wholesale was falling and the industry was growing. So just wondering.
The decrease is due in the industry to the vertical integration, to apply the corresponding table of vertical integration between activity and also some activity in the algorithm that is, if the weight of the ant is more than 19%, there are some activity that weight more than 10% that can be in this sector, and the decrease is due also to these reasons. And wholesale also is considered an integrated activity, but services are considered as ancillary activity. And this activity, in part for non-activity groups, do not compare in the new delineation. Is this the question?
Yes. It was
The
the answer.
first
Yes, it's
question
fine. Yeah.
For
I think it's okay. Yes.
For consolidation is my colleagues from SABS that develop new procedure, starting from legal unit frame SABS.
From legal
They
unit.
some, if not ancillary or vertically, I think that delete the interflow in case of ancillary or vertical legal unit.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. I think that in the interest of timekeeping, then if you have further questions, please talk to Serena later. We have also the opportunity to hear a presentation on manual profiling later, so thank you very much. And next, I would like to invite Kajsa Bergman from Sweden to present the second paper, which will be also addressing the automation of profiling process and how to define the enterprises and the practical issues related to automatic and manual profiling.
I think I need some assistance.
Yes, just a minute. Let's see if we can switch this. They are all open there, so if you just take Sweden. Yeah.
This one to continue. Yes.
Yeah. Yes, normal.
Yeah.
Can I? Yeah, I can. Okay.
Hello. My name is Kajsa Bergman, and I work at Statistics Sweden. And I have a colleague here, Richard Nilsson, who is going to help me answer the questions if I can't do it. Sort of. I'm going to talk today about our recent work doing profiling, automatic, and manual. And why do we do profiling? Because the structures of the large enterprises often very complex, as we know, and they are getting more complex by the year. Statistics based on legal units might therefore be a bit misleading. We have the Council regulation from 1993. It's quite old, but still valid. That says that enterprise is the smallest combination of legal units that is an organizational unit producing goods and services, which benefits from a certain degree of autonomy. And this is important, a certain degree of autonomy. What is that in decision making? Especially for the allocation of its current resources. An enterprise carries out one or more activities at one or more location. An enterprise may be a sole legal unit, which it often is. In our country, in the private sector, 13% of the legal units belong to a group, but 73% of the employees are employed in a company belonging to a group. So it's quite a large proportion. And this is a picture about the statistical units in our business register. The business register of today was launched in the year 2000. It's 18 years ago. We'll have a new one next year. But when we launched the business register 18 years ago, we we put enterprise unit, kind of activity units, and local kind of activities units in the, we have that infrastructure in the business register already. And as the situation is today, we have about 40 enterprises that consists of more than one legal unit, and about the same amount, and in some cases they are the same, that are divided into kind of activity units, COUs. But it is not enough, because we have this situation in Sweden. It's a quite small country, but we have a lot of multinational enterprises with the GDC, the Global Decision Center, situated in Sweden. So I think this is just definitions of the statistical units. I skip that and go to the profiling process that we do in 5 steps. We start with, we have a register of all the groups. A group register, which consists of all legal units that belongs to groups, and it's also the relationships are in that register. So we start the relationship between mother and daughters are in that register as well. So we start with that, and that is our population. So our population is all business groups that we can identify. We do automatic profiling for all of them, also the largest ones. And in this algorithm, we also identify candidates for division into COUs. And the algorithm takes into account the mother-daughter relationship. It has to be a direct link. And if the outcome of the automatic profiling are enterprises with the same NACE code, they should be put together. And the auxiliary activities like transportation, IT services, real estate, things like that, they are put together with the enterprises they serve, because they don't have any other purpose, as we know, than to serve the producing company. Then in step 2, there are some automatic there is an automatic control system that controls the structures, that controls that the mother-daughter structure is valid, and it's compares with the current units, And it also does complexity calculation. We rank the business group with the most complex business group at the top and the simple ones at the bottom. And the vast majority of groups are, of course, very simple. They consist of 2 or maybe 3 legal units. It's a producing, someone to produce goods or services, and then they might have a holding company and perhaps real estate, and just put them together. We don't look at them anymore. And then it's really a question about resources within, because I work at a large case unit, and we are responsible for the manual profiling. So it's a question about the resources at Stat Sweden. How many can we really do manually? Because it's such a time-consuming work, as you know, manual profiling. But we have said maybe 100 business group we will do manually. We have done 30. They aren't completely finished yet, but almost. And then they have a middle group, so to speak, with groups that are not simple enough just to, don't do anything about them. But they aren't complex enough to spend a lot of time doing manually. So we have to do some validation work there, but we haven't got a procedure for that yet. And we have to really do that in the near future. And then after that, it will be implementation in the business register in about a year, or maybe a bit later. And then we will adopt the adoption. We will use the new units in our service. And that I think is going to be really hard. I'm going to tell you something about the KCR, the Swedish Group Register, the Koncernregistret in Swedish. Contains all group legal units. And the information is retrieved from annual reports, and we don't have people sitting and reading annual reports in Sweden, at Stat Sweden, so we buy this from a private enterprise. We cooperate with a private enterprise that specializes in retrieving information, unstructured information from business reports. Yeah. And I have an example here about one of the first enterprises that groups that I profiled. It's a Swedish business group where the GDC is in Stockholm. And today it consists of 66 active legal units. So the situation today is that it's 66 enterprises. And the largest enterprise is divided into 2 kinds of activity units. After I did my profiling, me and a colleague, our suggestion is 14 enterprises, which 2 will be divided into 2 cows each. Well, auxiliary activities is included in the enterprises served. We've talked about that. But this is so characteristic of a lot of enterprise groups in our country. I don't know if you have the same in your countries, that they have a lot of legal units just consisting of one building, because it's easier to sell and buy legal units than it is to sell and buy property if it's together in one legal unit, if you understand. So 30 legal units will be put together in one enterprise for real estate. I mean, we have real estate groups that have hundreds of, maybe thousands of legal units, but which should be put together, because they are, it's just something they do to make it easier to sell and buy property. When we have a suggestion, when we have a proposal, we take this to a larger group and discuss it to get input from other people. And some of my colleagues said, why don't you make the whole Swedish part of the business group an enterprise? But then if you do that all the time, we will have group statistics on business groups. And so we have chosen to see legal units who functions independently within a business group as enterprises, together with the auxiliary activities. And we have had a lot of discussions within Statistics Sweden, what is independent enough for sufficient control. We think that is quite difficult, actually. What remains is to organize a meeting with the enterprise and to see if they think our picture is the picture that they have. We will also ask them to report the figures on enterprise level and cow level. We don't think they will do that. We think that our experience is that most enterprises, most companies can't do that because their accounting system, of course, are on the legal unit level. So we think that we have to do the consolidation work ourselves. Yeah. And the service affected by this is, of course, the SPS and the business demography. That's why we do it first place. FATS, Community Innovation Service, research and development in the business enterprise sector, and global value chains when it becomes part of FRIBS. And all surveys that uses cow as statistical units are also affected, which is most, will be at least most short-term statistics. How is this statistics affected? Well, the number of enterprises will, of course, decrease. We hopefully get a better picture of the size classes and the industries. Less inflated value when we do carry out consolidation for net turnover, for example, and production values. And industries where auxiliary activities are common will decrease in size. And it will probably break in time series as well. Other issues, how will this affect the production process at Statistics Sweden? Well, you won't be popular if you are a profiler in the organization, because our colleagues are really critical to the whole thing, because they have to alter all our production systems have to be altered to deal with the fact that the enterprises will report the figures on the legal unit, and we have to do consolidations to arrive at the enterprise unit, and also have models to deal with distributing values to cows. So this will be quite costly, I think, and time-consuming. We also want to develop a production system that can be used to when we create statistical units. We don't have a good system for that. And for the business register, we think initially, of course, it will be quite an extensive task to include all these new statistical units, enterprise and cows. But my colleague here, Rickard, said that maybe the continuous work may not be much more extensive. We will see about that. I think I said that about what we do now, which is not on the slides, is that we carry out some tests. We have made a copy of the business register and put it in a database, and done automatic profiling and put the result of that in that database together with the ones that we've done manually. And the different services are now carrying out tests. They are drawing samples, and they are really try to see how this affects the production system, how it affects the figures, the statistics. And it will be a report about this in the end of November. And depending on the outcome of the tests, our management will take a decision, hopefully by the end of the year, how to work ahead, because it's not yet decided if we should do the automatic profiling. If the test shows that it will be too complicated, or if the test shows that it will be too, well, it won't alter the figures that much, maybe, we will probably just do manual profiling for the largest groups. So it's not decided yet. Our management awaits that those tests and that report. Thank you for your attention. Do you have any questions?
Thank you very much, Kaisa. So I think that the presentations have illustrated the importance of the activity. You said that profilers are not very popular, but you know, the impact that was in Serena's presentation and in some other that have been presented in other occasions, they do have an impact on the output. So even though it's not a very necessarily popular activity because it creates changes to the processes, it has an impact on the quality of the statistics. So, do you have any questions to Kaisa? Yes, Rico, please, Netherlands.
Yes, I have a question about the delineation of your kind of activity unit. The way I see you first produce automatically some candidates, and I guess these kind of candidates are more or less derived from the secondary activities and the main activity. So you got these candidates. Afterwards, after profiling, you can say, we got now information about deployment and maybe turnover for each activity, then we can delineate a cow. But we have a little bit of problem to integrate the concept of the cow before we analyze, before we have collected some data. So I don't know, how do you deal with this kind of activity unit in your business register?
We have about, I think it's 40 enterprises today, 35 or 40 enterprises that are divided into cows, and we use them well, I worked a lot with structured business statistics. We use them there, we use them in other services as well. In the past, we asked enterprises, we only created cows if the enterprise could provide full SPS, sort of, because then if they could provide that, they could provide anything. But our methodologists now think that we should try to model-based assumptions and distribute the figures to the different cows. We have one of the largest enterprises in Sweden is actually they organize almost everything within one legal unit. So there we have I think we have 3 or 4 cows there, and the only thing they can give us is employment and turnover maybe. So we have models for that, and it's very time consuming, and we don't know if we arrive give the right picture, but to just have one legal unit would be even worse. So we have made that decision, but I can't really give you the specifics about the model. It's more, perhaps if you, Rickard, can say something about the model of cows. It's a really methodologists who deals with that. But you need to have some information about them, of course, otherwise you're just guessing. Was that answer? Yep.
Thank you. Then Finland, please.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation, Kaisa. I'd be interested in the timetables. Like, you now presented a test for automatic profiling, and meanwhile you are also leading intensive profiling, manual profiling. So could you briefly describe the timetables? Like, this is the test phase. Then you evaluate whether you will be using it in the future. Is this happening also meanwhile for the manual profiling?
Well, the plan now is to introduce, to implement the new enterprise units and cows in the register in the beginning of 2020. That is our plan. But as I said, we don't know the extent of it. Our management might well say that we can't. We have to put automatic profiling on hold for a while because it gets too expensive, or we don't have the resources. We don't know, and it really have to do. We really have to make a difference in the statistics to do it. But of course, it will do. We will. The number of enterprises will decrease. We know that at least. So that is our timetable. We work towards beginning of 2020.
Thank you. Then Andrew.